Do you know who I am? He snapped, pointing a thick finger directly at her. I will have you removed from this building. I will make one phone call and bury your entire career before lunch. Do you understand me? The room went absolutely silent. Every person in that suite held their breath. Mr. Webb, she said. Her voice was so steady it almost sounded gentle. You have threatened a contracted event director in front of 6 witnesses. And you are due on that stage in exactly 40 minutes to address 300 international executives, 2 of whom are personally connected to your board of directors. She tilted her head, just slightly. So the real question is not who you are. The question is who you plan to be in the next 40 minutes. Nobody breathed. The threat in the room did not disappear. It shifted. Because Harrison Webb was no longer the most dangerous person in the suite. Maya Johnson was. He stared at her with his mouth slightly open, genuinely thrown. He had expected her to apologize. He had expected her to shrink. He had expected her to do what people always did when he raised his voice. She had done none of those things. Across the room, 3 men stood near the open double doors. They had arrived 2 minutes earlier to discuss a last-minute donor coordination issue with the hotel liaison. Instead, they had walked into something entirely different. Yoon Seo-jun stood with his arms loose at his sides and his eyebrows lifted in an expression of pure, undisguised interest. Cha Do-hyun had gone very still, studying Maya's face the way he studied structural data, looking for the load-bearing point, the thing that was holding everything else up. Kang Tae-wook had not moved at all. He simply watched. Quiet. Careful. Taking in every detail of what was happening in front of him with the patience of someone who understood that the most important information was almost never the loudest thing in the room. Harrison laughed. Short, ugly, disbelieving. You think you can talk to me like that? I know I can, Maya said. That landed like something physical. The hotel manager, a thin man named Gerald who had been in hospitality for 22 years and thought he had seen everything, looked like he needed to sit down. Maya turned to him without waiting for Harrison to respond. Call housekeeping for the cleanup, she said, handing Gerald her backup tablet from under her arm. Have security remain stationed outside the door. Then back to Harrison, still perfectly level. You have 2 choices. You collect yourself, walk into that ballroom with your reputation intact, and we never discuss this morning again. Or you continue, and I personally ensure that this incident reaches the press team before your keynote does. Harrison's jaw tightened. You would not. Try me, she said. Simply. No heat behind it, which somehow made it worse. A long silence followed. The kind that decides things. Harrison looked around the room. 6 faces looking back at him. 3 cameras blinking red in the corners. And 1 woman who had not blinked once. He looked away first. He straightened his cuffs. He smoothed the front of his jacket. He picked up what was left of his dignity from the floor where he had thrown it and tucked it back into place with the practiced ease of a man who had done it before. Then he walked out without another word. The room exhaled in one long collective breath. Gerald looked at Maya like she had just stepped in front of a moving vehicle and the vehicle had swerved. Miss Johnson. Not now, Gerald. She took her tablet back. Get this room reset. 10 minutes. A server raised a trembling hand. 10 minutes. She was already moving. 8. Surprise me. That pulled a shaky laugh from somewhere in the room. The suite came back to life. Housekeeping rushed in with carts. Security repositioned. Staff began picking up glass and mopping the wall and pretending they had not just witnessed a full corporate standoff before 7 in the morning. Maya crossed toward the door. The 3 men were still standing there. She stopped for exactly half a second. long enough to acknowledge them, short enough to make clear she did not have time for a conversation. Seojin moved first. He smiled the way people smiled when they were genuinely delighted by something unexpected. That was, "I am working," Maya said, and stepped past him into the corridor. Do-hyun watched her go. Taewook moved one step to the side as she passed, just enough to clear her path without being asked. She noticed. She also knew she did not have time to think about it. Because the second she hit the hallway, three things happened at once. Her earpiece lit up with a voice saying the keynote speaker's flight had diverted to Charlotte. The phone in her right hand started ringing with Meridian Global's area code. And Priya came running around the corner with a folder stack pressed to her chest, eyes wide, moving at the speed of someone carrying several fresh disasters and looking for somewhere to put them. Maya. Pick one. Keynote speaker diverted to Charlotte. He says he cannot make it. Next. Meridian Global is threatening to pull $400,000 in sponsorship. Next. The seafood for the closing lunch never cleared the airport. Something about a customs hold. Maya kept walking. Fast, clean strides that made the interns behind her nearly jog to keep up. How long before doors open? Priya checked her watch. 87 minutes. Good. Maya grabbed the first phone. Pull the backup keynote list. Only people already in Atlanta. Breathing hotel air right now. No virtual, no remote, no maybe. Confirmed and present. She handed that phone to an intern and picked up the second one. Tell Meridian's director I will be in his suite in 7 minutes. Not 8. 7. If he leaves that room before I arrive, the meeting does not happen today. She ended that call and answered the one already ringing. If this is about the seafood, she said before the other person could speak, find a replacement protein, restructure the menu around what we have, and rename the course something that sounds intentional. If anyone asks, this was always the plan. She hung up. Priya blinked rapidly. Rename it. Confidence reads as competence. Move. They hit the ballroom doors and pushed through. The noise slammed into them like a wall. Workers on ladders adjusting light rigs that kept flickering. Audio technicians chasing a microphone feedback that screamed every 40 seconds like clockwork. Florists arguing across 3 tables about centerpiece heights, 2 of them in languages that did not include English. A registration team clustered around scanners that refused to read QR codes. A catering manager standing beside a tower of crates with the expression of a man who had made several terrible decisions this week and was only now beginning to understand the consequences. And at the far end of the ballroom, a 12-foot branded sponsor display leaning at an angle that suggested it had already given up and was simply waiting for permission to fall. Why is that still tilted? Maya said. A stagehand spun around. The loading crew brought it through the wrong entrance and the floor manager said we needed approval before. You have approval. She pointed. 4 people on that structure right now. You lift it, you do not drag it. If that base scratches the marble floor, every single one of us will be having a very different conversation tonight. They ran. At the ballroom entrance, the 3 Korean executives had returned. This time with members of their respective delegations behind them, assistants and security staff waiting for direction, schedules, and briefing folders being reviewed. But none of the 3 men were looking at their schedules. They were watching Maya. Seojin leaned toward the summit coordinator standing beside him. She always like this? The coordinator laughed nervously. Honestly, this is a calm morning for her. Seojin looked back at Maya, who was now crouched on the floor beside a registration table, personally rebooting a scanner because the tech assigned to it could not figure out the error sequence. Remarkable, he said. Not to anyone in particular. Do-hyun studied her differently. He was not watching the energy or the speed. He was watching the sequence of her decisions, the order in which she solved things, the logic underneath the motion. She is not reacting, he said quietly. The coordinator frowned. What do you mean? Every decision she has made since we walked in here was already prepared, Do-hyun said. She is not solving problems as they appear. She anticipated them. She is executing a plan she built before any of this started. He said it the way someone said something out loud that had already been true for a while. Taewook had not spoken. He watched Maya stand up from the scanner, cross the room to a crying intern, take the stack of misprinted badges from her hands, fix the error herself in under 20 seconds using the backup print station, hand the corrected stack back, touch the young woman briefly on the shoulder, and walk away. No announcement. No acknowledgement. Just done. He watched that more carefully than he had watched anything in a long time. Maya turned and cut across the ballroom toward the VIP corridor. The backup keynote. Dr. Elaine Foster. She is a confirmed summit attendee, staying on the 19th floor. Her credentials are actually stronger than the original speaker. Call her room. Be direct. Tell her exactly what happened and ask if she is willing. Do not oversell it. Do not beg. Give her the facts and let her decide. And if she says no, she will not say no. Maya pushed through the corridor door. What is the room number? 1914. I will call her myself in 4 minutes if you have not reached her in 3. She disappeared up the stairwell. Priya stared at the door for a second. Then she dialed. The hospitality lounge on the 2nd floor was the kind of quiet that expensive hotels manufactured specifically for powerful people, thick carpet, low light, the particular hush of a space designed to make everything feel negotiable. Derek Finch, Meridian Global's regional director, stood by the window with his arms crossed and his jaw set. He had been building this argument for 40 minutes, and he was ready to deliver it. Maya walked in alone. She did not apologize for the time. She sat down across from him, placed her tablet on the table, and turned the screen toward him before he could start. The signed placement agreement, she said. He looked at it. Premier corridor placement adjacent to registration, she continued. Your banners are 40 feet from the registration entrance. That measurement was verified this morning. The contract terms have been met. The spirit of the agreement is reflected in what was signed. She kept her voice even. No edge. No superiority. Just facts. However, I want Meridian's presence at this summit to feel like the investment it is. So here is what I can offer that was not in the original agreement. She swiped to the next screen. 1 branded pillar at the north entrance. Every international executive arriving this morning will walk past it. That positioning was not promised to you. I am offering it as a courtesy. Derek Finch looked at the screen, then at her. The north entrance, he repeated. Yes. When? 25 minutes. A pause. His arms uncrossed. That works, he said. Maya stood, collected her tablet, and walked toward the door. Miss Johnson. She looked back. Something had shifted in his expression. Respect was an uncomfortable thing on a face that had been prepared for a fight. I expected this conversation to go differently, he said. Most people do, she said, and left. When she pushed back through the ballroom doors 7 minutes later, the room had transformed. The display was straight and locked. The flowers were cut to the right height. The banners were moving. The audio was clean. The scanners were working. The registration lines had formed with a smoothness that suggested none of the morning's chaos had ever happened. And at the front of the stage, Dr. Elaine Foster was standing with her notes, moving through them with growing confidence, coached quietly by two of Maya's team members who had been briefed on exactly how to support her without overwhelming her. Maya watched from the back of the room for a moment. Then she exhaled. Just once. Short and quiet. The only version of relief she allowed herself on event days. "You called her yourself," Priya said, appearing at her elbow. "You took 3 minutes and 40 seconds, Maya said. "I had signal issues." "I know. That is why I called her." She said yes immediately. "I know that too." Maya was already reviewing the next item on her tablet. "What is the delegate count at registration?" 212 confirmed so far. "Good. 40 minutes to doors. Walk the south corridor with me." They moved. And behind them, unnoticed by Maya, Seojun stepped fully into the ballroom for the first time that morning and looked at the space she had rebuilt from disaster in under an hour. He looked at it the way someone looked at something they had not expected to find impressive and had been proven wrong. Do-hyun stepped in beside him. "She fixed the audio problem." "She fixed everything," Seojun said. "Not everything," Do-hyun replied. "She prioritized." "There is a difference." They both looked across the room to where Maya had stopped at the south corridor entrance, was speaking rapidly to a small group of staff, pointing in 3 directions, and had somehow also found time to hand a confused-looking international delegate back to the right registration line without breaking her own conversation. Taewook entered last. He stood at the ballroom entrance and took in the full picture. The room. The staff moving with precision. The setup that had come together from nothing in less than 2 hours. The energy that was controlled and focused and professional. And Maya Johnson in the middle of all of it. Not above it. Not managing it from a distance. In it. Moving through it. Holding it together with the kind of competence that did not announce itself because it did not need to. The doors opened at 9 o'clock. 300 people moved into the ballroom in waves: delegates, executives, investors, journalists, assistants, interpreters, and the particular breed of person who attended international summits and managed to look equally at home in every city on Earth. The energy shifted instantly, from preparation to performance, from the back of the house to the front, from Maya's world to everyone else's. She stood near the audio station at the left side of the hall as the room filled, watching not the people, but the space around them, checking sightlines, reading body language, listening for anything that sounded wrong. 87 minutes ago, this room had been a disaster. Now it looked like nothing had ever been wrong with it. That was the job. Not the applause. Not the credit. Not the moment on the stage. Maya. Priya's voice in her earpiece. Dr. Foster is backstage and ready. She looks nervous. She is allowed to be nervous. Is she ready? A pause. Yes. She is ready. Good. Maya glanced at the stage. Give her 2 minutes alone before we mic her. Tell her to breathe. She clicked off the earpiece and looked back at the room. Her room. Her event. Hers. She had built this from a collapsed keynote, a furious donor, a sponsor crisis, a seafood disaster, and a grown man who had thrown a glass at a wall before 7 in the morning. She had built it from all of that. And it was perfect. From across the room, through the crowd of 300 people, Taewook found her without trying. She was standing very still at the side of the hall while everything moved around her, and there was something about the way she held herself in that moment, the quiet pride of someone who knew exactly what they had done and needed no one to confirm it. That made it impossible to look away. He did not look away. And when the lights dropped for the opening session and the room went warm and amber and DR, Elaine Foster walked onto that stage and delivered an address so precise and so compelling that the audience forgot she was a replacement at all. Tywook stood in the back of the hall and thought about the woman who had made that possible. Who had made all of this possible, without once asking to be seen for it. The afternoon networking break came at 2 o'clock and the rooftop terrace filled fast. Business cards moved between hands. Interpreters worked in clusters. The Atlanta skyline held still and golden in the late afternoon light, while people who ran industries and moved markets stood against it and talked about what came next. Maya was not on the terrace for leisure. She was doing 3 things at once: monitoring the catering flow, tracking a schedule adjustment for the evening session, and reading a message from the summit's executive board about the gala running order. When she walked around the corner of the bar station and stopped, Seojin was standing directly in her path. Not accidentally. He had a glass of water in his hand and the particular expression of someone who had been waiting and was trying to make it look like coincidence. "You were not going to pretend you were not waiting there," she said. He laughed. Genuine. Unguarded. "No. I was absolutely waiting." She almost smiled. "I have 4 things I need to." 2 minutes, he said. "That is all." She looked at her watch. Then at him. 1.5. He accepted that without complaint, which she noted. "The keynote replacement," he said. "That was your decision?" "Yes." "You had what, 90 minutes?" 87. He shook his head slowly. "In my company, I have people whose entire job is crisis management. Whole teams. Systems built specifically for this." He looked at her with something that was not flattery. It was too direct for flattery. "You did what they do. Alone. Before breakfast." "I also fixed an audio problem and talked a sponsor off a ledge," she said. "But I appreciate the acknowledgement." He laughed again. And she realized she liked the sound of it. Easy and real and not performed for anyone. "Yoon Seo-jun," she said, as if reminding herself. "You already know who I am." "I do. Does that change anything?" She studied him for a moment. "No. Should it?" He smiled like she had given him a gift. "Maya Johnson," he said. "I would very much like to continue this conversation. Tonight, perhaps. After the evening session." She picked up her tablet. "If the evening session runs on schedule, I will have 12 minutes between the closing remarks and the gala setup." "I will take 12 minutes. "You will probably get 4, she said, and walked past him. She heard him laugh behind her. She kept walking. Cha Do-hyun found her an hour later. Not on the terrace. Not at the bar. Not in any of the places people went when they wanted to be found. He found her in the service corridor behind the main stage, crouched on the floor beside a cable layout, working through a connection issue with one of the technical crew members. She did not hear him approach. "The feedback issue this morning," he said. She looked up, then stood. "Monitor 3, she said. "Bad ground connection. You identified it in under 10 seconds. 8, actually." He considered that. "How?" "Because I had already done a full technical walkthrough at 5 this morning, and I knew every potential failure point in this room before anyone else arrived." He was quiet for a moment. "You prepared for failure before you prepared for success," he said. "Success is just what happens when your failure preparation is thorough enough." Something shifted in his expression. "That is a philosophy," he said. Not dismissively. Like he was examining it. Turning it over. "It is Tuesday," she said. He almost smiled. She could see the movement at the corner of his mouth. "I asked about you," he said. "I know." He looked momentarily surprised. "You know, my assistant told me. You asked what time my day usually ends." He was quiet for a beat. Then, and she told you she did not know." which was her way of protecting me from answering a question I had not decided to answer yet. Fair, he said. And he meant it. She looked at him carefully. The stillness of him. The precision. The way he engaged with every exchange like it was data worth collecting. You do not do small talk, she said. No. You find it inefficient. I find it dishonest, he said. People perform interest they do not have. I prefer not to. So what are you actually interested in? He looked at her steadily. Right now? How you think? He paused. I have been around competent people my entire career. I recognize competence. What you have is different. Different how? Competence executes what exists, he said. What you do is build something that was not there before. Repeatedly. Under pressure. Without losing the original standard. He paused again. That is rarer than people realize. Maya looked at him. She was not used to people being this direct about what they observed. Most people wrapped observations in social cushioning. He simply stated them. Like facts. She found it unexpectedly refreshing. Chadohayan, she said. Yes. Why are you really here? At this summit. Your assistant could have represented your company. You do not need the networking. You have turned down larger events than this one. He met her eyes. I had reasons, he said. Some of them are clearer now than they were when I arrived. She held his gaze for 3 seconds. I need to finish this cable check, she said. I know, he said. I will leave you to it. He stepped back. Maya Johnson. Chadohayan. I hope the rest of your day has fewer disasters. It will have exactly the disasters it was always going to have, she said, crouching back down to the cables. I have already planned for all of them. She heard his footsteps leave the corridor. She also heard the small sound he made before he walked away. It was not quite a laugh, but it was close. Taiwook did not seek her out that day. He did not appear in corridors. He did not wait near bars. He did not ask Priya questions. He simply moved through the day at his own pace, attended his sessions, engaged with his delegation, and did what he had always done. He paid attention. He noticed when Maya's team shifted formation during the afternoon break, suggesting a plan change had been executed mid-session. He noticed that she ate nothing until 2:15 in the afternoon, and even then it was half a sandwich consumed while walking. He noticed that she checked on the keynote replacement twice after the session ended, not to evaluate the performance, but simply to make sure Dr. Foster felt all right. He noticed all of it, and he said nothing to anyone about any of it. Until the evening. Maya turned. Taiwook was standing 2 feet behind her. She had not heard him arrive. She did not react to his proximity, just met his eyes. What your mother told you, he said. About making something better without making the person feel worse. Maya went still. She remembered saying that. Yesterday. In passing. To Priya. Not to him. He had not been in that conversation. You heard that, she said. I was passing the corridor, he said simply. I was not trying to overhear. She studied him. It stayed with you, she said. Yes. Why? He considered the question seriously, the way he seemed to consider everything. Because most people with that level of discipline use it for themselves, he said. For their own outcomes. Their own results. He paused. You use it for everyone else. She held his gaze. Does that bother you? He asked. That I use it for everyone else? That no one uses it for you. The terrace was full of sound and movement around them. Maya felt something she almost never felt in professional spaces. Caught. Seen. Not in an exposing way. In a way that was harder to manage than exposure. I am fine, she said. He nodded slowly. Like he had heard both the answer and the thing underneath it. I know, he said. That is not what I asked. She looked at him for a long, careful moment. Then someone called her name from across the terrace. She broke the gaze. "Excuse me," she said. She walked toward the next thing that needed her, and she felt his eyes on her back until she rounded the corner. She did not look back, but she wanted to. She did not sleep that night. She lay in her hotel room on the 21st floor while Atlanta hummed beneath her and the ceiling held still above her and her mind refused to be quiet. She had been running hard for 4 days. She knew that kind of tiredness. She knew how to manage it. She knew how to put everything in its correct box and close the lid and wake up in the morning ready for the next sequence. What she did not know how to do was put Taiwook in a box. Not because he was complicated. Because he was not. He was simply the clearest thing in a week full of things that required constant interpretation. She thought about Seo-jun, who made her feel like the most interesting person in any conversation and seemed to genuinely mean it. Who had waited in her path and asked for 90 seconds and accepted when she gave him 45. She thought about Do-hyun, who did not perform interest he did not have and had looked at the way she worked like it was the most interesting data set he had encountered in years. Who had said things directly that most people would have buried under 6 layers of social safety. And she thought about Taiwook, who had not sought her out once all day. Who had simply paid attention. Who had heard a sentence she said to someone else and carried it carefully for 24 hours. Who had asked not whether she was managing, but whether she was all right. She turned onto her side. Outside, the city ran itself through the small hours. She thought about her mother. The person worth choosing, her mother had said once, during a conversation Maya had not known she was storing for later, is not the most exciting one. It is not the most accomplished one. It is the one who sees you clearly and chooses you anyway. Maya stared at the window. Atlanta glittered and moved. She thought about the way Taiwook had stepped aside to clear her path that morning without being asked to. Such a small thing. The kind of thing most people would not even notice doing. She noticed. She always noticed. She closed her eyes. Sleep did not come quickly. But when it did, it was the first genuinely quiet sleep she had had all week. The 5th morning of the Global Innovation Summit arrived the way the worst days always did. Quietly. Without warning. Looking exactly like every other morning until it did not. Maya was in the operations room at 6:15, already reviewing the charity gala run sheet for that evening, when Priya walked in and placed a single sheet of paper on the desk in front of her. It was a printout of an online article. The headline read, "Summit Event Director at Center of Executive Love Triangle. Atlanta's most talked about story no one is officially discussing." Maya read it once. Then she set it down. Who published this? A trade gossip site. It has been shared 600 times since midnight. Does it use my name? Yes. Full name. Photo from the summit registration. Maya exhaled slowly. Controlled. Does it say anything that is technically false? Priya hesitated. It is written to imply things without stating them directly. It describes interactions that happened, but frames them as something more than professional. It suggests that the 3 Korean executives have been competing for your attention and that you have been encouraging it. I have not encouraged anything. I know that. Priya's voice was careful, but the framing does not require proof. It just requires attention. Does it affect the summit directly? She asked. Not the programming. But 3 journalists have already sent inquiry emails to the press office asking for comment. 2 of them are from international outlets. And the 3 men? I do not know if they have seen it yet. Tell the press office no comment on personal matters. If they push, redirect to the summit's official outcomes and delegate feedback. Nothing else. What about the article itself? Find one factual error. There is always one. They described me as a liaison in the second paragraph. I am the events director. That is a professional mischaracterization. Push back on that specifically and request a correction. It gives us a foothold without engaging with the rest of it. Priya nodded and made a note. Maya. She looked up. Are you all right? Maya picked up her tablet. I am working, she said. That is always the answer. She walked out of the operations room and into the day. She found out Seo-jun had seen the article at 8:45. He appeared at the corridor entrance near the main ballroom. I saw it, he said when he reached her. So did 600 other people. 800 now. He did not smile. I want you to know it had nothing to do with me or anyone in my delegation. If someone from my team spoke to that outlet, it was not your team, she said. How do you know? Because your team would not be that sloppy. The source is someone adjacent to the summit operations. Someone who has been watching all week and decided there was value in creating a story. This is not your fault. He was quiet for a moment. It will follow you, he said. These things follow women in ways they do not follow men. I have seen it happen. I have watched careers get reshaped by whispers that had nothing to do with performance. I know. Does that concern you? It concerns me that I have a charity gala tonight that requires my full attention, and I am standing in a corridor having a conversation about an article I cannot control. She softened slightly. But I appreciate you coming to say this directly. He nodded slowly. For what it is worth, he said, the parts of it that were observational rather than fabricated, they were not wrong. She looked at him. I am not pretending I have not sought you out this week, he continued. You are the most capable person in this building and also the most interesting. Both of those things are true, and I am not embarrassed by either. Seo-jun. I am not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know the timing is impossible. I know you are working. I just did not want you to think I would deny what I have felt to protect my own reputation. He paused. You deserve people who do not make you invisible. That is all I wanted to say. She stood in the corridor for a moment. Then she picked up her tablet and kept moving. Do-hyun found her during the mid-morning session break. He did not mention the article at all. Instead, he found her in the same service corridor where they had spoken the day before, reviewing a lighting adjustment for the evening gala, and said without preamble, I want to finish the conversation we started. She looked at him. About operational failure? About what is missing, he said. About information and trust. She understood immediately that he was not talking about the panel discussion anymore. I have been thinking about what you said, he continued. That most failures come from missing information, not bad decisions or bad people. Just gaps in what was known at the time. He stopped walking, which meant she stopped too. I have spent my entire career assuming that if I gathered enough data, every decision would eventually become clear. And this week has made me less certain of that. She studied his face. The precision was still there. The control. But something underneath it had shifted. Some things cannot be measured, she said. No. He was quiet for a moment. But they can be trusted. That is what I am learning. That some things require trust before they can be understood. You are not good at that, she said. It was not a question. No. I am not. He looked at her steadily. I leave tomorrow morning. Early flight. I want to be honest with you before I go. Do-hyun. I know the timing is wrong, he said. I know I am not easy to be with. I know the distance between Seoul and Atlanta is not something that disappears because two people want it to. He paused. What I do not know is whether any of that matters more than what I have felt every time we have spoken this week. She held his gaze. The corridor was quiet around them. Somewhere in the distance, The sounds of the summit continued: voices, movement, the particular hum of important people doing important things. Here, in this narrow space behind the stage, it was just the two of them. "I need to finish this summit," she said finally. "I know. That is not a rejection. I know that too." And he almost smiled, more visible this time than any expression she had seen from him all week. "I am a patient man. When I decide something is worth waiting for, I wait." Maya stood alone in the service hallway for a long moment. Then she exhaled and returned to work. The charity gala was scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock. By 5:30, the transformation of the Grand Hyatt's rooftop terrace was complete. What had been a networking space for the past 4 days was now something else entirely, draped in deep blue and gold, lit with hundreds of small lights that would glow against the Atlanta skyline once the sun finished setting. Arranged with tables and stages and auction displays that represented months of planning condensed into a single evening. Maya walked through the space alone before the doors opened. She checked sightlines. She tested audio levels. She verified table placements and confirmed catering timing and made 17 small adjustments that no one else would notice, but that would make the difference between a good event and a flawless one. This was her favorite part. The quiet before. The moment when everything was ready and nothing had started, and the only sound was her own footsteps on the floor she had built. "You do this every time." She turned. Tywook was standing near the terrace entrance. He was dressed for the gala, dark suit, perfect fit. "Do what?" she asked. "Walk the space alone before anyone arrives." "I watched you do it before the opening session, before the networking reception, before every major moment this week. You have been paying attention." "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment. "Did you see the article?" she asked. "Yes." And I read it once and then I stopped thinking about it. That's simple. That's simple. The person who wrote that article does not know you. They saw interactions and invented a narrative. That is what people do when they do not understand something. They create a story that makes sense to them, whether or not it is true. It will still follow me. Probably. For a while. He looked at her directly. "Does that change who you are?" She was quiet. "No," she said finally. "Then it does not matter." She studied his face. The steadiness there. The certainty that had been present from the first moment she saw him and had never wavered once. "Why did you come to this summit?" she asked. "You have been turning down events like this for 2 years. Your assistant could have represented Kong Group. You did not need to be here." He was silent for a moment. "There was a name on the organizing committee list," he said finally. She waited. "Your name was in the event brief that my team prepared," he continued. "They included a professional profile. Standard preparation for any major summit." He paused. "Something about the way it was written. The decisions you had made. The problems you had solved. The way you protected things without requiring recognition for it." He looked at her. "I wanted to see if the person on paper was the same as the person in the room." Her breath caught. She had not expected that. And she managed. "The person in the room is larger than anything on paper," he said simply. The terrace was empty and quiet around them. In an hour, the space would be full of 300 people and cameras and noise, and all the pressure that came with events of this scale. Right now, it was just the two of them. "Tywook," she said. "Yes." "I do not know what to do with this." "I know." He did not move closer. Did not push. "You do not have to know tonight. You do not have to know this week." He paused. "I just wanted you to understand why I came. Before the summit ends. Before the flights leave. Before this becomes something we both have to wonder about." She looked at him. "You are not asking for anything," she said. No. Why not? Because asking would require you to decide before you are ready. And I would rather wait for a decision you are certain about than push for one you might regret. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, the gala starts in 90 minutes. I know. I need to finish the final walkthrough. I know that too. She nodded slowly. He stepped aside. She walked past him toward the stage area. She did not look back, but she felt his presence behind her until he finally turned and walked inside. The gala began exactly on time. 300 guests in formal attire filled the rooftop terrace as the sun finished its descent and the Atlanta skyline lit up in blues and golds that matched the event design so perfectly it looked intentional. Maya had positioned herself near the east side of the space, close enough to monitor the flow but far enough from the main stage to handle problems without being visible. Everything between now and then was networking, circulation, and the particular energy of wealthy people preparing to give away large amounts of money for causes they believed in. She was reviewing the auction sequence on her tablet when the first problem appeared. Harrison Webb. Again. He had been managed carefully all day, kept occupied with meetings and photo opportunities and the particular attention that made him feel important without giving him access to anything he could damage. That arrangement had apparently failed, because Harrison was now standing near the center of the terrace, drink in hand, voice rising. Face flushed with the particular confidence of someone who had been drinking since the afternoon session ended and had decided that tonight was the night to settle whatever grievances he had been carrying all week. And he was directing all of it at the summit's lead international sponsor, a man named Park Young-woo, who represented one of the largest Korean investment firms in attendance and whose continued support was worth approximately $2 million to the summit's future programming. Maya moved immediately. But the terrace was crowded and she was on the wrong side of it. She watched, calculating angles, as the confrontation escalated. Harrison's voice got louder. You think you can come into this country and lecture us about innovation? Your company has been copying American technology for 20 years. Park Jung-woo's expression went cold and still. Around them, people began to notice. Conversations paused. Heads turned. 2 journalists near the bar reached for their phones. Maya pushed through a cluster of guests, trying to reach the scene. She was not going to make it in time. And then 3 things happened at once. Seojin appeared at Harrison's elbow like he had materialized from the crowd. He laughed at something Harrison had not actually said, clapped him on the shoulder, and smoothly redirected the confrontation into what looked from the outside like an enthusiastic debate about market competition. Within 40 seconds, Harrison was laughing back, his anger transformed into something that resembled friendly argument. At the same moment, Do-hyun positioned himself between Harrison and the nearest camera crew. He did not block them, obviously. He simply occupied the space, asked one of the journalists a question about their coverage of Korean aviation technology, and created enough of a physical barrier that the cameras found nothing worth filming and moved on. And Taewook walked directly to Park Young-woo and drew him into a private conversation on the far side of the terrace. Quiet, unhurried, like he had been planning to speak with him all evening, and the timing was simply coincidental. Within a minute, Park Jung-woo's expression had softened and the tension in his shoulders had released. The whole thing took less than 3 minutes. No one in the room except Maya understood what had just happened. She stood still for a moment after it resolved. 3 men. 3 completely different responses. All of them correct. Seojin had protected the feeling, the energy of the room, the relationships that held everything together. Do-hyun had protected the result, the coverage. the external narrative that would follow this evening into tomorrow's news cycle. And Taewook had protected the person. He had gone directly to the man who had been hurt and made sure he felt valued before the hurt could settle into something permanent. Maya looked across the terrace at where Taewook was still speaking quietly with Park Youngwoo. She remembered something she had said to Priya 3 days ago, in passing, while reviewing the sponsor list. Park Youngwoo took a real risk supporting this summit. He deserves to have a good evening. She had said it to Priya. Priya had not spoken to any of the 3 men, which meant Taewook had been listening, paying attention to what mattered to her before she had even told him it mattered. She felt something shift in her chest. Something she was not ready to name yet, but could not ignore anymore. The rest of the gala unfolded without crisis. The live auction raised more than projected. The keynote donor address received a standing ovation. The energy stayed high and warm and generous through the final hour. By 11 o'clock, guests had begun filtering toward the exits, full of champagne and goodwill and the particular satisfaction of an evening that had exceeded expectations. Maya stood near the terrace railing and watched them go. She had done it. Another event. Another success. Another thing she had built from nothing and held together through pressure and delivered without anyone seeing most of what had made it possible. She should have felt satisfied. She did feel satisfied. But she also felt something else. Something that had been building all week and had nowhere left to hide. Maya. She turned. All 3 of them were standing there. Seojin, Do-hyun, Taewook. They had not planned this. She could tell from the brief glance that passed between them a recognition that was neither hostile nor coordinated. They had simply all come to find her at the same moment, drawn by the same instinct, arriving at the same place. The terrace was nearly empty now. A few staff members cleaning tables. A photographer packing equipment. The Atlanta skyline holding steady behind them all. Seojin spoke first. "We leave tomorrow," he said. "Early. I wanted to say goodbye properly." She looked at him. This man who had made her feel visible all week. Who had waited in corridors and asked for minutes of her time and never once made her feel like she owed him anything in return. "Seojun," she said. "You are remarkable." He heard the shape of that sentence. She watched him receive it. "But," he said quietly. "Not but. Just entirely sincerely." She paused. "What I feel when I am with you is seen. Appreciated. Like I am the most interesting person in any room. And that is not a small thing. That is actually very rare." He nodded slowly. "But it is not enough," he said. Not bitterly. Just understanding. "It is not that it is not enough," she said carefully. "It is that I already know I am interesting. I already know I am worth paying attention to. What I need is not someone to remind me of that." She looked at him steadily. "What I need is something I am still figuring out how to describe." He was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Not the performance smile. The real one. "If you are ever in Seoul," he said, "I hope you will call me. Not for this. Just because I think you are someone I would like to know for a very long time." "I would like that too," she said. And she meant it. He stepped back. Do-hyun moved forward. His expression was controlled, but she could see the question in his eyes. "I meant what I said earlier," he said. "About waiting. About patience." "I know you did." "And?" She looked at him. This brilliant, precise man who had challenged her mind in ways that had felt like discovering a new language. Who had admitted things he probably never said out loud. Who had looked at her work like it was the most interesting problem he had encountered in years. "Do-hyun," she said. "The way you see things, the way you think, that is extraordinary. And the conversations we have had this week have mattered to me. They have made me sharper. They have made me consider things I had not thought about before. But, he said, but I do not think we want the same kind of life. She paused. You want someone who fits into your system. Someone who can be categorized and understood and integrated into the way you have built your world. And I cannot be that. I do not want to be that. I need someone who does not need to understand me completely in order to choose me. He was still for a long moment. That is fair, he said finally. I do not agree with all of it, but it is fair. I know you do not agree. You knew I would not. I knew you would hear it honestly, she said. That was more important. He nodded once. Precise, the way he did everything. If you change your mind, he said, I am not difficult to find. I know. He turned and walked toward the terrace exit. She watched him go. And then there was Tywook. He had not moved. He had not spoken. He had simply stood there, watching her say goodbye to the other two men, waiting for whatever came next with the patience of someone who understood that some things could not be rushed. She turned to face him fully. The terrace was empty now except for the two of them. The city glittered below. I thought about it, she said. All night. Most of it. And? She took a step toward him. You came to this summit because of a name on a document, she said. Because of what someone's work said about who they were. You flew across an ocean on a hunch. It was not a hunch, he said. It was a recognition. A recognition of what? Of someone worth knowing. He paused. Of someone worth crossing an ocean for. She looked at him. I am not easy, she said. I work constantly. I carry things I do not always say out loud. I have never lived anywhere but the United States. I do not know what a relationship looks like with someone on the other side of the world. Neither do I. Does that concern you? Many things concern me, he said. Uncertainty does not stop me from moving toward what is right. How do you know it is right? Because for the first time in a very long time, he said quietly, I am not calculating. I am not measuring outcomes or weighing probabilities. When I look at you, I simply know. She felt something break open in her chest. Not painfully. Like a door that had been stuck for a long time finally swinging wide. You see what I carry, she said. Yes. You have seen it all week. Yes. And you stayed anyway. Yes. He stepped closer. Because seeing what someone carries is not a reason to leave. It is a reason to help them hold it. Her eyes burned. She did not let the tears fall. Tywook. Yes. I am choosing you. He was very still. Not because you are the safest choice, she continued. Not because you are the most certain. But because you are the one who sees me clearly. All of me. The parts that are strong and the parts that are tired and the parts that do not know how to stop working long enough to let someone take care of me. She paused. And you chose me anyway. Before I was ready. Before I even knew this was something I was looking for. He reached out and took her hand. Not dramatically. Not possessively. Just a connection. Steady and warm. I have waited my entire adult life for someone I did not have to perform for, he said. Someone I could simply be present with. Someone who did not need me to fill every silence with words. He looked at her. When I found that person, I was not going to let timing or distance or fear stop me from telling her the truth. She looked at their hands together. His fingers were warm and certain against hers. The summit ends tomorrow, she said. Yes. You fly back to Seoul. Yes. And then what? And then we figure it out, he said simply. Phone calls. Flights. Whatever it takes. However long it requires. He paused. I did not cross an ocean to give up because the logistics are complicated. She almost laughed. You make it sound simple, she said. It is simple, he said. Not easy, but simple. I choose you. You choose me. Everything else is just details. She looked up at him. The Atlanta skyline glowed behind them. The gala was over. The summit was ending. And standing on a rooftop in the city where they had met, Maya Johnson made a choice that she had not planned for and did not regret. "Okay," she said. "Okay, okay. We figure it out." He exhaled slowly, and she realized it was the first time all week she had seen him release tension he was holding. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to choose something uncertain." She squeezed his hand. "You came to a summit because of my name on a document," she said. "That was brave first. I am just catching up." He smiled. It was the first full smile she had seen from him. It changed his entire face. "Maya Johnson," he said. "Kong Taiwook. I am going to spend the rest of my life being grateful for this week." "That is a long time." "Yes," he said. "It is." And standing on the rooftop of the Grand Hyatt Atlanta, with the city lights spread out below them and the future spread out ahead of them, they did not need to say anything else. They simply stood there together. Two people who had found each other in the middle of chaos. Two people who had chosen each other despite every complication. Two people who understood, finally, that the right love was not the love that arrived on schedule. It was the love that was worth rearranging everything else for. 1 year later, the wedding was small by Kong family standards. 120 guests. A venue in Seoul that overlooked the Han River. A ceremony that blended Korean traditions with elements that honored Maya's heritage. Her mother flew in from Atlanta with her 3 closest friends and cried through the entire ceremony. Priya came with her husband and gave a toast that made everyone laugh and Maya tear up. Seojin sent flowers and a note that read, "You chose well. Both of you." And yes, I am still waiting for that phone call. Do-hyun sent a bottle of wine older than both of them and a card that said simply, "Some questions do not have clear answers. Yours did." I am glad. Taiwook's family attended in full force. His mother, who had been skeptical at first, had spent the past year slowly warming to Maya, won over not by performance, but by consistency. By watching her show up. By watching her fight for things. By watching her refuse to shrink even when the pressure to conform was enormous. His father remained reserved, but he had stopped opposing. That was enough for now. His sister Minji stood beside Maya during the vows and whispered, "If you hurt him, I will make your life very difficult." Welcome to the family. Maya laughed through her tears. When Taiwook took her hands and made his promises, he spoke in both languages. "You taught me that strength is not silence," he said in Korean. "That protecting someone means standing beside them, not in front of them." Then, in English, "You are the first person who made me want to be known. Not managed. Not understood strategically. Known. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you feel the same way." Maya's vows were shorter. She had never been good at long speeches. "I spent years building events for other people," she said. "Making their visions possible. Protecting their moments." She looked at him. "You are the first person who made me want to build something for myself. Something that is ours. I choose you. Today. Tomorrow. For all the days I have left." The reception lasted until midnight. By the time they finally left, Maya was exhausted and elated and more certain than she had ever been about anything in her life. In the car, Taiwook took her hand. "How do you feel?" he asked. She looked out the window at Seoul, her city now, their city, glittering in the darkness. "Like I finally stopped running," she said. He squeezed her hand. "Welcome home," he said. And she was. 3 years later. Maya stood in the lobby of the Grand Hyatt Atlanta and watched the setup for the annual Global Innovation Summit with the particular satisfaction of someone who had been here before. She was not running this event. She was attending it. Her company, the international events firm she had built from scratch over the past 3 years, operating from offices in Seoul, Atlanta, and Singapore, was one of the summit's consulting partners. Her team was backstage right now, supporting the new events director through her first major international conference. Maya had trained her personally. She had taught her everything: the systems, the contingency planning, the way to stay calm when everything was falling apart, the art of solving problems before anyone knew they existed. And she had told her the most important thing: protect the people, not just the event. That is what makes the difference between good and unforgettable. Taiwook appeared at her elbow. He had flown in the day before, rearranging his schedule, as he always did, to be present for moments that mattered to her. Remembering, he asked, "Always. The glass against the wall?" She laughed. "That was day one. That was the moment I knew." She looked at him. After 3 years of marriage, he still surprised her sometimes with the things he remembered. "You knew that early?" "I knew that you were someone worth watching," he said. "I knew that becoming someone worth choosing would take longer." He smiled. "I was prepared to wait." "You did not have to wait long." "No," he agreed. "You were faster than I expected." She looked around the ballroom. The same space. Different people. Different energy. But the bones of it were the same: the chaos, the pressure, the particular magic of bringing hundreds of strangers together and hoping something meaningful happened between them. Two people who had found each other in chaos. Two people who had built something neither of them had planned for. Two people who had learned, over time, that the strongest things were not the things that never bent. They were the things that bent and held anyway. This is what the story leaves behind. The right person does not ask you to shrink. They do not mistake your strength for intimidation. They do not require you to become less so they can feel like more. The right person sees what you carry, and they stay. Not because it is easy. Not because the logistics are simple. Not because everything lines up perfectly. But because you are worth the complication. Worth the distance. Worth the effort of building something that has never existed before. Maya Johnson spent her whole career building events for other people, making their visions possible, protecting their moments. And then she found someone who wanted to build something with her. Not for her. With her. That is the difference. That is everything. If this story made you feel something, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. And share this with someone who needs to remember that being strong and being loved are not opposites. They never were.